So, Avatar, The Way of Water, the trailer came out recently, and I just wanted to give my opinion on James Cameron and now the fact that the sequel to Avatar is coming out. And I know a lot of people have done a lot of reaction videos, reviews of the trailer, and so on and so forth, but I want to kind of just talk about James Cameron for a sec in this video, because James Cameron really has been able to turn out mediocre movies recently. Just basically two very mediocre films, which is Titanic and Avatar, and each film becoming an insane box office hits. And it's kind of startling to me, because the thing about James Cameron is that his filmography is very small. He doesn't have that many films under his belt, but what he does have, what he have made is some amazing classics, but also mediocre films that have become extremely successful, that have become, I don't know, like cultural phenomenons in a way. So when you look at James Cameron's career, it goes way back to, like, he made a sequel to a shitty horror movie called Piranha 2: The Spawning, which was sort of an independent horror film, and he technically directed it, but like he had fought with the director. I can't pronounce the guy's fucking name. I'm not gonna say it, but here's his name right here on screen. But he had difficulty with the kind of control over the film, of how much of his input he could put into the movie, and because of that, he says that it wasn't truly his film, even though he was part of it. And because of how terrible the movie was, he for several years disowned the movie. And it's only been recently that he's actually acknowledged it as his directorial debut. Now, after that movie, of course, we have possibly one of the greatest, on the list of greatest sci-fi films to come out. That's the Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. I mean, those four films, with two of them, the Terminator and Terminator 2, being possibly one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time. I mean, what more can you say about those two movies? It's amazing that when the Terminator came out, and when I saw it as a child, how much of an impact it had on me, like watching the VHS tape that we borrowed from the library, and just being amazed by the effects, the soundtrack, the acting, the sort of sense of like horror that there was intermixed with sci-fi elements, how scary but how intense and awesome it was. And then here comes, in 1991, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and it takes it to another freaking level, and it's just an incredible, possibly one of the best action sci-fi films of all time. Aliens, which came out in 1986, I think is a pretty great, well, not great, I would say it's good. It's a good movie. A lot of James Cameron's technical skill is really on display in that film, and you can kind of see there's so much of an improvement upon that movie as a sequel to Alien, which came out in 1979, directed by Ridley Scott. And it's pretty good, pretty great. I know a lot of people absolutely love this movie. I think it's pretty fine. I'm not really that obsessed with the Aliens series. I think they're a fine series, but I think his other films sort of are a little bit slightly better. Then in 1989, he came out with The Abyss, which I noticed a lot of people don't really talk about it that much, and I think it's sort of considered, it was considered sort of a disappointment at the box office at the time, and I liked it as a movie. It's really long, and I like the kind of setting of it being sort of on an experimental sort of underwater oil platform, and how it had sort of sci-fi elements with action and suspense elements into it. And I thought Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Antonio, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, and Michael Biehn, who was from his previous film, The Terminator, they did a phenomenal job, and I think it's a sort of a pretty good movie. I wish it was a little bit talked about more, even though it's a really long movie and it was sort of a disappointment at the box office. I thought it was pretty okay. And then, you know, with all those classics out of the way, the Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, in 1994, you sort of have this bizarre movie that you're surprised is actually directed by James Cameron, which is True Lies, which is sort of a hokey spy action comedy film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, did far better of a job in Terminator than Terminator 2, but it's just really hilarious that this movie feels like it could have been directed by anybody else. Like, I don't know why James Cameron made this film. It's not a terrible film at all. There's a lot of funny parts in it, but it's very much a standard action film. There's nothing spectacular about it, and it's one of the, I guess, one of the kind of bizarre movies that he sort of directed in his filmography. I don't know. I always felt like this movie has always sort of stood out to me as being sort of, why did James Cameron make this movie? Why did he direct it? It just feels like a standard cliched action film. And I feel like I could talk more about True Lies, but I want to go on to Titanic. And of course, Titanic is the movie which I feel like is very much sets up for what Avatar is in the future. It's a mediocre film. It's been talked to death. It's not a bad movie. Leonardo DiCaprio did a fantastic job. Who else was in? What's her name? Kate Winslet did okay in that movie. It's not a bad film. I think the first half is very boring. The second half, where the ship is sinking, obviously is awesome. Seeing that thing going down is pretty cool. It's pretty great seeing the Titanic sink. But other than that, it's very much a mediocre film, and it's kind of incredible how much of a box office success and how much of it, like, again, I'm gonna reuse that term, cultural phenomenon of that movie. And it's, I don't know, I can't really say much anything else. It's just, yeah, Titanic is Titanic, I guess, whatever. And then after that, he made a couple documentaries, Ghosts of the Abyss, Aliens in the Deep, which just shows, again, what my friend, I asked my friend, like, what's his opinion on James Cameron, and he said, yeah, you can obviously tell that James Cameron has a fetish for water, and it's like, yeah, it's on display with his documentaries, and with Avatar, with Titanic, and The Abyss, and it just shows with, like, his documentaries. I haven't seen them, but I suppose they're probably really good documentaries, but again, they should be judged as documentaries and sort of separated from the rest of his filmography. And then obviously in 2009 came out Avatar, and we know what happened with Avatar. Became one of the biggest box office hits of all time. Everybody kept talking about it. I remember it was like on CNN with Larry King interviewing James Cameron. Everybody kept talking about it. Nobody would shut up about it. And I finally saw it, and it was mediocre. It wasn't bad. It wasn't terrible, but it was mediocre. And that's what I feel is going to be happening with Avatar: The Way of Water. It's just going to be another mediocre film. It's not going to be spectacular, but it's going to be a huge success, and it's going to be a huge phenomenon. Especially the fact that not only is this movie going to come out, but his third movie is going to actually come out shortly after that. It's not going to take another decade, I guess, which I guess it'll probably come out in 2024. We don't know. I mean, to me, it's sort of incredible that James Cameron has sort of been able to kind of hit two successes, Titanic and Avatar, with like two very much mediocre films. And I kind of compare James Cameron with Michael Bay, in that Michael Bay is almost the inverse of James Cameron. He's made shitty movies. Most of his movies have been very much terrible, and yet instead of being a failure, he's been able to really make movies that were complete box office successes. And that's where I feel like Michael Bay should be sort of compared to James Cameron, in the sense that he's sort of a genius in that he knows how to make a film that will become a box office success. And not just a film, but a series of films. Remember, Transformers was absolutely huge. And the amount of money that was made, the billions of dollars that was made, really, I mean, is astounding to me. Even though how terrible those movies were, the only one that I liked was the first Transformers, and that was okay. There's so many problems with it, so many Michael Bay-isms in it, terrible dialogue, juvenile dialogue, horrible jokes, bad writing, typical editing from him. It's just so silly and ridiculous. The only movie I think I would say I like about Michael Bay that I think is alright, or two films, is The Rock and 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, which I find is sort of an interesting film. I actually did a review of that movie recently. Well, not recently, about a year ago, and I'll link that review in the description below. But I feel like Michael Bay and James Cameron have something going, and they know how to work the Hollywood system to their favor. Whereas Michael Bay makes terrible movies that succeed. James Cameron knows how to just make a few mediocre films, just two, that I guess give him the big bucks. And we're going to see with Avatar: The Way of Water, it's probably just, I mean, look, Avatar it's basically Dances with Wolves, but set on an alien planet in the future. That's all these movies are, and that's all they're going to be. There's nothing really deep about these films, and I think that's also part of why they're going to become hugely successful, is because that it's Native Americans, but alien Native Americans fighting against this technologically superior military force that's trying to colonize them. We haven't seen that before, and I think that's working towards James Cameron's advantage in the sense that the movie could be marketed to a broad audience, and it will be a huge hit. And I credit James Cameron for being sort of a genius in that way, and I credit Michael Bay for being a genius in making the shitty Transformers movies being successful. You know what I mean? But I mean, I wish I could see James Cameron going back to his roots, making really quality sci-fi films, but I'm not gonna see that from him. I'm just gonna see more Avatar. And there's nothing much there for me to analyze about Avatar. These movies are okay. They're fine. That's it. That's all I can say about them. Please leave a comment in the comment section down below what your thoughts are about James Cameron, what you think about him, what you think about Avatar, where I'm wrong, where I said something stupid, or where I kind of see the guy in a wrong light. Let me know in the comment section down below. Please like and subscribe to this video, to my channel. Sorry. And like always, please have a wonderful day. Thank you.